we're going to go into bullying here. So October is National Bullying Month. StopBullying.com talks a lot about all kinds of different bullying preventions and issues and what we're facing. So this is what we're going to talk about today, is who's at risk. We're going to define, we're going to go into 3 forms and 3 types, okay? 3 forms and 3 types of bullying, and the signs, and then what peer orientation is, my favorite new thing. Can't get enough of it. I stumbled across a book that about attachment. I am an attachment theorist. I am trained in extensive EMDR attachment style trauma therapy. So yeah, parent-child roles, super important to define what that is. Which parent role, caregiver role, teacher role, right? Those are all. Defining parental terminology a little bit. Root issues and prevention, we're going to talk about attachment, of course, shame, belonging, emotional coaching. So we're going to go into like, here's the preventative stuff and root issues. There's lots of that in those slides. So, okay, who's at risk? And like Heather says, go ahead and chat a question. If you have a comment, just put it in there. I'll be checking them. I might stop and answer it. I might talk about it right there. If you have a question like, hey, I didn't get that. That was way too much, too fast. Then I'll explain it. So students that have learning disabilities, autism, emotional disruptions, speech, yes, language impairment, race, victimization of peers without, without disabilities, just regular kiddos. But we definitely have some targeted people. So tweens, 9 and 12, okay? And it's really, statistics are funny because you have to find the most recent. I try, but the most recent is, it takes years to put out studies, right? So before pandemic, 2019, I have like, anger issues and anxiety issues in schools and everything, but we really don't have 2021, 2022, and coming back to school after the pandemic. So it's all gone up. It's all got a little bit more strained with anxiety and stress and teasing and insecurities. So 41% of students who report being bullied indicate that the bullying would happen again. And that is bullying, right? So if we're going to define what bullying is, it's unwanted aggression behavior among school-aged kids. And it's a power imbalance. So I'll talk a lot about the bullier and what they are trying to achieve. The biggest word there is dominance. And so, and there's a power imbalance between the two people. Now you can put this to anything. We're talking about school aged today, but this can be completely across the board with just about anybody, any adult. So behavior is repeated and it's unwanted. Unwanted repeated behavior. If that's repeated, meaning that's twice, it's like the first time, that doesn't mean that we can't report and go through those things, like totally unacceptable, right? The first time, but repeated, potential repeated is the problem. Both children are bullied and who bully others may have serious long-lasting problems. We know that, have serious lasting problems, just long-lasting problems. There's definitely some statistics to that for sure. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 forms of bullying. So I'm just going to throw them out there: verbal, physical, and emotional. So here's verbal. teasing, name calling, inappropriate sexual comments, threatening harm. So verbal, okay. So we're going to get into cyberbullying, okay, for sure. But that's same. So cyberbullying usually is emotional and verbal for sure, right? You're not physically with the person. So that's saying mean things in all kinds of ways, gossiping, rumors, and teasing and name calling. That's all the verbal. Okay. So social is that emotional part. I think it called it emotional, but social, like, so leaving someone out on purpose, telling other children that they're, how many times, how many times did your kids come home and say, my friend said that they don't want to be friends with me anymore, or I don't want to be friends with them anymore because they're friends with somebody else. That's huge. It comes out all the time. Like, I don't know how many times I have kiddos 8, 9, 10 in my office that tell me that. Well, this person said that they wouldn't be friends with me if I was friends with them. And this person said, well, if you're friends with them, I'm not going to be friends with you. It's a huge triangulation, right? So, and then I'm going to embarrass you in public and I'm going to spread rumors about you. And that gets really, really deep into some severe psychological issues. That's horrid when you have to go to school after someone has completely spread rumors about you and right in front of you, and it keeps going through the school or home. So physical bullying, of course, is physical. Taking or breaking someone's things is physical. So you can't take someone's, so of course, in a domestic situation or an intimate partner situation, I'm certified in domestic violence and doing with couples, you can't take someone's stuff. That's bullying. You can't take their phone, that's domestic violence, but you can't make it so they can't communicate. Or and so when we talk about at home bullying, that's one, taking things or breaking someone else's things. That fits into the home one a lot, in the domestic. So and all these, of course, this one is done at home way, way more than anywhere else to our siblings. And so this is where I work with families big time on breaking these patterns of physically getting into people's space. It's domestic, so we're going to talk about that. Yeah. So remember this form of physical, this one's mostly done at home. And why is that? That's always my question, right? So let's go over what cyberbullying is. It's a digital communication tool that makes another person have an emotion, sad, angry, scared, whatever. Lots of emotions. It's repetitive again, and it's intentional, and it's very much directed. And I'm going to try to keep my personal stories at bay because this is recorded and put on YouTube forever. So yeah, I mean, but I've always, if you know me, I had 25 foster kids live with me over a 10-year period, and my own children. And I mean, I don't know about you, but all of my children and my foster kids, I mean, every single one of them went through a period of some sort of bullying very early on, or bullying. So and it's huge. And so then we got into the digital world. And so my last kiddo, right, and of course my foster kids never had a phone. They never had a digital problem with that. They never got bullied or bullied over social media or anything because they didn't have that ability. So the ones that now are coming up in the next generation, right, of all this, that, and as my kids are grown, very grown, and out of the house somewhat, they, don't have to hopefully deal with this, but it still goes into adulthood. And I talk about this, about electronic harassment. There's an actual charge that can be initiated if there is warrant for harm and threats electronic harassment. Once you tell one time a person to stop contacting me, texting me, calling me, sending messages on Messenger or Instagram, you tell them to stop and you screenshot that and then you block them. And I'll go into that later too, a little bit of preventative stuff, but this is where cyberbullying, that's the, and now if they keep continuing to go around the circle, how many times if, you know, you block them from this way and they go into this way and then they open a new account or they get a different phone number. Yeah, a lot of domestic, you know, intimate partnerships that are abusive and stocky, you know, definitely do these. I've had lots of clients that have had to, you know, go down to the police department and file a report and show that they have continued to harass you. That is cyberbullying. It also is against the law. It is against the law to harass someone after you have told them to stop. So there you go. When students were asked about cyberbullying, mean and hurtful comments 25%, rumors spread online 22%. Like I said, I'll try to keep out my personal, I mean, I have a really great story that goes along with cyberbullying, but I'll leave it out. But do not respond to cyberbullying. You have to screenshot it, save it, you know, right? Show the evidence. Now Snapchat, it goes away 24 hours. I've had people screenshot a friend of a friend that after they've already blocked the person and they're still bullying them over Snapchat, and then it goes away, right? Well, that if a friend snaps it, shots it, takes a picture of it, and then as it goes, you know, and it's like, hey, this person is still bullying me on a social media platform, and then it goes away really fast. So if someone sees something like that, please, you know, show the evidence, keep it, you know, from going further. Okay. 81% of teenagers believe others engage in cyberbullying because they think it's funny. They just don't think it's that big a deal. Oh, we're not doing that much damage. How much damage are they doing? So anyone have any comments so far on this cyberbullying? I'll let a few more people in here. Do you see it as a problem? Bullying at school. So this is a little bit of percentage here of hallway, 43%. Right in front of everyone. Now, if you tell me that there's nobody in a hallway or stairwell, there is a lot of people. So right in front of people, the most busiest area, and that was kind of surprising to me. So no shame at all that you're just getting bullied right in front of everyone, and it's kind of like a you know, and then there's a group of people usually, right, targeting one or something like that, and so it's like a funny thing, right? So inside the classroom, 42%, that is an unsafe place to be. You're trapped in a classroom, you're supposed to be learning, and 42% of bullying in the school happens right inside the classroom. Now, I don't know about you teachers, but how in the world are you supposed to keep that at bay? And then cafeteria, there's nobody in the cafeteria. There's no adults. There's not very many people watching out. School grounds, have my own story on that one too. I have spent some time, I'm all I'm gonna say, on the playground. Between my foster kids and my girls, I have been on the playground myself many, many, many times as just an adult. I get permission, right? I don't just go out there, you know, but it's like, so school grounds, it's really tough because you're just out there. But online, 15, I think that's higher. That's got to be higher now. Bathroom, locker room, that's where it's like targeted to what, like, that's where you know, you think it would happen, is like this private place. Nope. And school bus, you know, I hear a lot of more on school bus, but I think that's, you know, just there too. But so that's just a little bit of interesting where bullying happens. Okay, a little bit more on the targeting population of school bullying. So You can read all these, gender-based and African American, Caucasian, Hispanic, Asian. So in the home, this is my favorite one. Anybody have a problem with bullying in the home, or do you even look at it that way? I think a lot of people don't understand that it's extreme bullying in the home when there's domestic fights and touching each other and punching each other and fighting and aggressive behavior with verbal and you just, it's not just civil. It's not just civil. It's civil. It's like, oh, here's the siblings of just, oh, it's just normal. Siblings are supposed to fight. Siblings are supposed to be aggressive. No, they're not. This is supposed to be the safest place ever in our home. And so what do you think is going on? And this has increased a lot. So I did a technology workshop a while back. It was like technology in the home and technology kind of an epidemic. And so statistically, it showed that we're alone in our homes together more than ever. So let me say that again. We're home alone together more than ever. So we're home together as families, actually eating dinner more often. And it was before the pandemic even. We're eating dinner a little bit more than we ever have been. We're home together more than we've ever been, but we're alone. So we're like trapped with each other, but we're alone. We're in our rooms by ourselves. And so we're very isolated. And then when we have to interact, it's like, let's just displace, which I'm going to talk about, which is one of the biggest defense mechanisms of displacing on the closest people to us. Now, think about the last 2 years, how close and trapped we were all together for about a year. And then it's like, that's why the bullying at home increased, because who else are we going to get mad at and displace on? Who else are we going to, pick a fight with? Who else are we going to be aggressive, get out our emotions on, but our families? And so mistreatment of siblings, and I mean, I do this whole thing about space and about rules and about your value systems in the home and starting over with why it is that we want to continue conflict in the home, right? So let's think about this for a minute. So let me read the chat. My kids are always fighting at home. I've tried so many different things. Yes, we do. My oldest is the worst. So there's something always going on when there is a bully in the home, an aggressor, a domineering, right? So once again, go back to the definition of there's a power shift, right? The oldest is usually the family hero. Then the second one is the peacemaker, and they like conflict because peacemakers actually like conflict. They try to mediate the conflict. They're not just they're not passive if you're really a peacemaker. But so the birth order is very, very interesting to me. I studied that a lot. I have several books on birth order. It's my favorite thing too, besides the tax. And so there's something going on, right? There's some deeper rooted issues when there is an aggressor and a bully, whether that's a parent or a kiddo. And there's a target, okay? So if there's one sibling that's a target, and that's continued, I mean, think about it. Just switch the roles here for a minute. If that was happening in the school and someone was targeting your daughter or your child or your kiddo in the school, the same way a sibling was, you would be all over it. You would be in there, hopefully, as a mama bear, papa bear, going, this is not okay. I expect my kids to be safe when I send them to school, and they have to learn. They have to have a safe brain so they don't go into fight or flight in the back of the brain or midbrain. They have to be here to be able to learn. So we want to make it a safe place. It's not a safe place for a lot of kiddos, but then you go home and it's not a safe place. We've got a problem. We're in back of the brain all the time. And we wonder why we're not sleeping, why we have anxiety, why we have focus issues, why we have eating issues and severe mental health issues, because we're in the back of the brain so much. So that's a little bit of conflict there. So back to the domestic, just a little bit of a definition of domestic. It's violence, physical or harm, with anyone that you basically have a relationship with, you've lived with, intimate or not, or you've had some sort of relationship with. So that's domestic. Like I said, I've worked with domestic violence and offenders and anger management a lot in the court system. And yeah, it's a higher offense. But if we're doing this in the home, it is domestic violence. And if, of course, if parents are doing domestic violence in front of children, that's a child abuse charge. So let's see. I'll read that one in a second, that comment. So signs of being bullied, this might answer some. So, and really, we've got to, there's lots of signs that can overlap with a lot of other things. So trauma and having issues at home, domestic violence going on in the home, can cause all these too. So it is signs of being bullied one way or the other. So social, we're having headaches, stomach aches, feeling sick. I had a kiddo that's like, started getting stomach aches, wouldn't go to school. So what do? You figure out there's some other root issue, right? So physical and mental, I'm a certified integrated medicine provider for mental health. It's really long. So in my certification there, mental health and integrated medicine of what the function of the body, how it reacts. So headaches, physical, stomach aches, feeling sick, that is a physiological response. Nightmares is a physical response. Appetite changes is a physiological response. And this is what causes, so 5 out of the 10 things here are all going to be physical. I guarantee it. And so then we develop gut issues. We actually develop leaky gut. We develop sleep insomnia, and it's not insomnia, it's trauma from being bullied. Appetite changes can actually physiologically, definitely huge. Kids lose weight, gain weight. So, and adults. So, more possible signs. That was the physical part. And then here's the physical part again. It's physical, but it's emotional. So we do self-harm, suicidal thoughts, self-esteem problems, of course. And then we go into the mental of grades declining and distraction, the worry, the anxious, the panic. And that all, any kind of worried, anxious, panic goes into physiological body response, or it's actually not true panic if it's not a physiological response where you can't breathe and you're throwing up. You're leaving the classroom and actually having to throw up because the physical body and the tension and the nausea takes over. Okay. So we're doing good. We're to the we're to the spot of no, I don't know. There's a mess up on my slide. That's why I go through this first and then I make sure everything goes smooth. And then when I save it and send it out to you guys, because this is like, oh, there's a mess up on my slide. So someone says, dealing with a child whose parents are connected with people like teachers or law enforcement or someone, that's where they're easy for their child to get away with it and keeps bullying. So there's a scapegoat there, right? So say you go to get help and you're saying the child's parents are connected to who you would get help from. Just go around, go as far as you need to. If it's a serious problem, right? If it's a serious ongoing bullying problem, then it's like, oh, they're just being kids. Oh, it's not that bad. And a lot of people not connected to those things will say that. And that may be true. But if we have any of this going on and we have severe consequences to a physiological response to being bullied, we have to stop it. We don't allow our kids to be unsafe. I don't care where they are, because someone's got to advocate for them. And that's what we're going to go into next, is attachment is parent orientation. Because they will turn, if they go to a parent and they turn to their peers instead of the parent, because the parent did not, or meaning any gatekeeper, and I'll explain what a gatekeeper is in a minute, but any gatekeeper, you go to a gatekeeper and you do not get help. They will not turn to those gatekeepers anymore. That is teachers, that is a lunch lady, that is a cousin, that is friend's mom, that is your parents, that is a teacher, that is whoever, to a therapist. If they come to me and tell me what's going on because they haven't told anyone else, which happens some of the times, and if I wasn't a parent-oriented person, meaning I am not going to turn them to their siblings, to their peers, to a non-adult. And if they go to that adult and they don't get the needs met, they won't do it again. It's actually more traumatizing. So, yeah, oldest boy. So we've got some oldest in the family that are bullying the younger ones. Sounds like a couple of you. And it's my two oldest boys. Yeah, they're again. Okay. So that's, yeah, there's a power struggle, and usually it is an older to a younger. I mean, that's very, very, very common. I mean, I think it's probably 80% of bullying in the house is definitely an older to a younger, because they feel powerless. So what are they going to do? Transfer their powerless to the easiest target, which is a younger kid. Okay, so this is peer orientation. This whole book talks about peer orientation. I quoted, I have a picture of it later. Hold on to your kids, why parents need to matter more than peers. I came across this book, and I came across another parenting book recently because of, honestly, because of my daughter. And I am like, wow. And so she's like, hey, mom, I found this new book, and it's not new. And I cannot believe, I get so excited because I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never heard of the guy. There's so much out there. And I am a book person. My own website is called Paperback Connections, because this is a paperback, and I have hundreds of books and I connect them all together. Okay. So I quote every sort of anything I talk about is from a book. Okay. It's not just out of me. So peer orientation, I have listened to this twice. I've read it. Seriously, like, and he has a whole chapter on bullying. And this came about just like a month ago. And I'm like, and I've listened to like 6 of his YouTube videos. And he talks about, he has a subject for just about everything on there about from his book. But he's from Canada. So peer orientation, it goes through what that is. So I've listed a few things here, right? So it replaces the parent, does not attach to the parent. If you're peer oriented, you listen to your peers way over any adult, okay? And I'm going to kind of go over why that's a problem. Why do you think that's a problem? We're putting children in charge of children right here. Children in charge of children. And this has never happened more in our history of the universe. In other countries, it's different a little bit for sure. But seriously, this has never been the way. And it's caused some severe unattached kids because they're not going to their parents to get their attachment needs, which is trust, fulfilled. So, children in charge of children. And it makes me cringe to think a 7-year-old is going to go to a 7-year-old for help, or a 7-year-old is going to go to an 8-year-old at school and say, what do you think? Or let's bully up on this one kid, and they're in it together. Seeks approval from peers. So their peers give them way more approval than their parents. So the word is approval. So when I see adult people in my practice and they're hustling for approval still by their parents, which is forever. We still, until the day we die, not till the day our parents die, we hustle for approval. And you think about my foster kids and how that was constantly a problem. I'm going to hustle for approval. So then you get into a different parent-child relationship. You switch roles, you go into the parental role, and you start caregiving for your parent because you want approval. See, for example. So parent-oriented kids attached to their caregiver, they're influenced by them and the interaction that they have, which is eye contact, which is 5 senses, which is all the things that we need to know that the kiddo knows we're alive and that we're here, that we're right here in their space. It's a natural source of care. It's natural. It's a secure base of comfort. This is all attachment. And if you want to go into attunement, you can call it, there's attunement that after you're attached, the kid will attune and you will attune to your child and you will know what they need and you'll actually attune to their emotions and their needs and they can be influenced by that. So that's a parent-oriented kiddo. And so the problem is this over here that he talks about and what happens when you look for your value system and your code of conduct according to your peers and not your parents. Okay. So, and you think about your own childhood. Yeah, think about your own childhood and how, if you were parent oriented or if you were peer oriented. You gotta write that down and think, have I ever thought about that? Did I really trust my parents? Did I really get my parents' approval when I went to them and said, hey, I need help? Or did I get shamed, or did I, get pushed? So let me see. I grew up in a household with 4 kids total and full-time working mom. Yep. And it's very difficult to acknowledge that I was raised peer-oriented because of this. It feels like a direct attack on my mom. Now, good comment. Let me comment on that. Parents do the best they can. It's not a judgment on where, single moms and working moms but did you have the attachment to her when you needed her? Or were you parentified? If you were the oldest of those 4 kids, you'd pretty much be parentified, meaning you took care of the other children. And they were attached to you. So if you're attached to your siblings more than your parent because you go to your siblings, that's also an issue. That's parentification. But so it's how your parents reacted to your needs. But yeah, you probably sought out your peers, and that's because of the situation. You just have to now look at your own children is the point, right? I have a workshop that's called Healing Your Inner Child, and it talks about, it's from a book called Running on Empty. If you want to be running on empty and emotionally neglect your children as you were emotionally neglected, then you will follow suit. If you want to read that book, Running on Empty, then it teaches you how not to be an emotionally neglected parent. Okay. So I've talked about the parent-child, adult, parent, adult, child, whichever way, several times, and I constantly talk about this. This is from a book from 1973. It's called I'm Okay, You're Okay. And it just explains, and why I throw this in there, it is so deep. I use this constantly, this model, because if you're going into your parental, because that's from birth to 5, external events cause you to record what you're taught and how to go into parental ego, which is 0 to 5. Okay, it does have to do with attachment too. But then adult is 10 months on, forever, exploring and testing of life, and it's like this is how. And child is birth to 5 too. So that's your internal events and how you felt as pretty much That's why this correlates with attachment, because attachment 0 to 3, but it's really 0 to 6. So here's 0 to 5, right? So you will go into the child behaviors, thoughts, and feelings of how you felt as a child during that time as an adult. And now in your marriages and in your relationships and your partnerships, this all comes out. And I use this model constantly in therapy. We just want to make sure if we're the parent or the adult, remember the adult can be, or the parent, caregiver is the gatekeepers. So we want to stay in those roles. We want to keep the child in their child role. We don't want to switch them. We don't want them in charge of other children. And we don't want them in charge of us, because that's parentification. That's when, and now things happen. Parents get sick and you caregive. That's situational. And you caregive and you're making them meals, see, instead of them making you meals, maybe when you were littler, or maybe when you're an adult and you're caring for your adult, which I am in that state of like caring for your adult parent now, right? So if you switch roles and you go into the parental role and the adult parent goes into the child role because they need caregiving, it's okay for a little bit, but you've got to make sure you still stay in those roles. Okay. Yeah, peer-oriented single parenting. I'm going to do one on single parenting because I haven't done one on that, and that would tie into all this too. It's really difficult to do all of this stuff as a single parent. So this is another chart that I absolutely love. It's just a great visual. Okay, so once again, I'm okay, you're okay. This is my book. Look how old it is. It's a very old book. I've had to tape it. So I got it in my 20s and it was old then. And then staying okay. This is another part of that. So this goes through the parent, child, adult, I go into that a little bit with the wounded child workshop. But this is what's happening is your fight, flight, or freeze. Do you see? It's like, oh, and then flow, right? So this is like, I love this chart because it just goes through so much. So you look at this and see how you are a fighter in your own bullying. If, when we have contention or how we're reacting, do you react with freeze? I'm not okay, but you are, so I'm going to shut down. Or you're okay and I'm okay is flow. So I'm okay and you're okay. If a bully or someone being bullied, if they honestly think that they're okay, and then you're like, okay, I'm okay. It's one of my favorite words. And then you look at the bully and think, okay, maybe something's not okay with them because they're fight. You're not okay. I'm blaming. I have a temper. I have pressure. I feel frustrated and angry. Yeah, that's the bully. But we have to teach the victim and our kiddos that this is how you can be okay in the repair of that. And there's so much more here. So we're going to get to it, most of it. So there's just a chart here. I'm going to skip over these fast. You can go through this when you get the PowerPoint. It's just an example of each one. So I am not okay, but I am this. I'm not okay in the victimization. The victim is not okay. I'm not okay. Here's the thriver. This is what we're trying to get to. I'm okay, you're okay. Assertive, problem solving, grateful, courage, worth, boundaries. So these are the root issues. There's a lot of root issues. So this is my analogy about, I use this all the time because it's just a visual for me and everyone else. So the leafy issues are something that can pass. They can come with the seasons. They fall off. They regrow. They don't have to be the same thing every year. They can change. But those, so even like, a financial issue can be in the leafy, so this is about, I did one just on bullying, but I have other ones on just regular issues. Like, so I have failed relationships with kids at school because I keep on bullying them and displacing on them and being mean to them. And I wonder why I don't have, consistent friends. Okay, that can change. And then here's the secondary emotion is the trauma. These are all the things that we're feeling as a secondary emotion. But the real issue here that we have to tackle is trauma, is shame, is so in his studies, and he's a he's a clinical therapist. He found, in lots of these studies, is the issue is frustration. And the word frustration comes up all the time. So yes, that's a secondary emotion, but it's a deeper rooted issue. Parent-child roles, stress brain, meaning I already talked about that. That's your fight or flight. So you're in the back of the brain. That's a root issue. If you're constantly in trauma and fight or flight and survival brain, you're going to be exhausted. You're going to be very angry. You're going to go through, you're not going to be focused. You're going to have sleep issues, and all those things are going to be down here. But the main root issue that comes back to all of this is attachment issues. If we can get the kiddos attached to a teacher, just a teacher, and one teacher can cause that kiddo, the bully or the bullied, to have an attachment to an adult. So we don't leave them to their peers. Make sense? Displacement. So in that root issue, let me go back. So right here, it's like, this is down here, and I could list, several other things, but defense mechanisms are down here, okay? But they don't have to be, they can be right here. So displacement can be done. You can get rid of it. You can get rid of defense mechanisms. But if you stay in defense mechanisms for life as a trauma response, this displacement moves down to here. And then it's in the root. And now you've got some serious undoing. So just for an example, this is what displacement is. An unconscious defense mechanism redirecting a negative, usually negative emotion. It's not like a happy emotion, but I have a real big issue about negative and positive emotions. They're all just emotions, but for sake of understanding, we end up having to call them negative or positive. But anyways, so a very negative emotion of anger, displacement, frustration, domineering. I need to be domineering. So I'm going to tell you something, and I'm going to displace that emotion onto someone else in a threatening way. And it is a defense mechanism. Displacement is a defense mechanism to trauma. Redirecting your negative emotions on someone else when they had nothing to do with it. Yeah, it's very, very deep. It's just not okay. And it comes with bullying all the time, especially at home. Because remember, we displace on people that are closest to us. The only example that I need to even explain this to you so you understand it is this. The boss yelled at me, so I went home and kicked the dog. That's displacement. Road rage is displacement. Anger in the home is displacement, because we come home and who do we take it out on, right? This one should be wiped off the planet. This one is absolutely unacceptable. It's not quite as bad as gaslighting, but the next step is gaslighting, okay? So very fun stuff. Anger, just an example of that. Strong emotion, you displace that. This is an example of a primary emotion going into jealousy and insecurity and frustration, which ends up being resentful and worthless and hurt and annoyed. So that's just an example there. Okay, we're getting there. Conflict. It's just a definition of conflict. It is a root issue that can really stick into class, racial, social, political. What in the world? And I found this, and I didn't mean it to be political of red or blue, but it is. It's just conflict, right? Okay. Yeah, you'll get this graphic. You'll get this PowerPoint, so you can have that graphic. You can print off the slide of any of these, right? Just print it off and use them as you will. I have a lot of handouts And I'll actually put that one on my website of the I'm okay, you're okay, really good fight, flight, or freeze. It combines everything all together of our fight, flight, or freeze and our parental and our I'm okay, you're okay into one visual. And I'll put that handout on my website. If you go to Paperback Connections with an S.com, you can print out any of my handouts. So understanding your own shame cycle. Why is this important? Why are we going to go into ourselves? If you're going to be a rescue parent, if you're going to displace, if you're going to have your own attachment issues, you're going to displace that onto your children. If you have your own insecurities of approval, I'm going to hustle, remember, for approval. And because I was emotionally neglected, so now I'm going to emotionally neglect my kid, and subconsciously you'll do it. You won't even understand. So that's where that running on empty book comes in. It just explains that. It's just very simple how to not repeat that cycle. But perfectionism comes in, right? Lack of boundaries comes in if you don't know your own shame cycle. So that's just a little plug about shame, because, and think about the bully and the bullying and the victim and the perpetrator is everyone's got shame just bleeding out of us, literally. This has to be addressed, is the shame epidemic, right? And I could go into that forever, but I just have a little PowerPoint on it. So this is what shame causes. And here's some explanations of shame. So I can't go into all of it, and I'm not going to read all that, but it is basically I am bad or you did something bad. So if you're going to be bad, and guaranteed the one that is bullying feels deep down they are bad. There is 110% shame geared behavior stemming straight from shame deep down in their soul. And so we have to get to that. We have to find out what's going on there, right? Emotional awareness. I just put this in here to say that I have a whole PowerPoint on emotional coaching, teens, regular emotional coaching part 2. I mean, so if you want more on how to emotionally coach, that is from John Gottman, How to Raise an Emotionally Intelligent Child. It's referenced in the back of this, but that is the 5 steps on how to emotionally coach. And I've got tons and tons of more. It's my top 5 parenting book for anyone, for any teacher, and I've listed those top 5 in the back of this. So attachment and attunement, we've talked about. How do we attach? It's just an emotional bond between parents. It is mostly 0 to 3, and then 0 to 6, and then reattach. And of course, if you have an attachment emotional neglect in your childhood, that's going to come out in adulthood, no doubt. So there's a little fun thing about, don't like to give labels to cartoons, but because, the Peanuts are my favorite. It was my childhood thing. So it's kind of funny, right? Like, oh, we're going to see how high anxiety from abandonment and how attunement and attachment work with different personalities. So you have a secure attachment, insecure attachment, which is, I can't go into that much. It's not about attachment today, but it is, because that's where it stems for bullying. How do we love and belong a human? I'm going to skip over that so we can get to prevention. We have 5 minutes. So I told you it was a long one. Okay. Prevention. Let's get to some now what to do. Well, number 1, it has to begin at home. So the child is attached to you as an adult figure, whoever that is. And then second would be teacher and those gatekeepers, right? Friends, the neighbor, parents, it's adults, right? We want to find those healthy relationships with attachment. Learn the warning signs, healthy habits, empower your children, report the bullying, be an advocate, okay? Basic stuff, right? Basic stuff. Know what the policies are. Fight for the policies. Make new policies. We obviously had to have a new policy come up as cyberbullying happens, and we have to do an electronic harassment charge now that we can get people to stop harassing. We've always had stalking, no contact orders, protective orders that I've helped people get in the core systems. And, but now we've got cyber. So this is something that I just have to make sure we get to. Because we always talk about the ones that are the victims, right? But see, I'm kind of different. Yes, we need to engulf the victims and pull them into us. But who's helping the perpetrators? See, I've worked in the system for years, and I don't know what happened. I don't know how I got kind of stuck in that field for 5 or 6 years of working with the offenders, anger management, domestic violence, substance abuse offenders, DUIs, parenting offenders. And then before I became this part of my life, before I became a therapist, I was a foster parent. Way before. I was very much older when I started school, and it took me 10 years and then 3 years of 4,000 of clinical hours to get done and take another test. So it was 13 years total. And so I took in foster kids before that and brought in these kids that were the victims that sometimes were the perpetrators, because they learned that very, very well, and helped the perpetrators. So who's helping the perpetrators? We have got to increase our adult gatekeepers so we can defense mechanisms as their strengths. Is that okay to have a defense mechanism? They've survived. Bullies have survived through no attachment, usually, to their caregivers. So who's doing that for them? Think about the movies and the ways that people take in these kids and change their lives. And they don't need to be trapped and frustrated and demanding, and they don't have to be deeply wounded. They don't have to. We have to change their trauma so they don't keep bullying. So we have to go into helping those kiddos. And I don't know who's out there that does that, but we have to increase their emotional intelligence. We have to increase their vulnerability so they can come to other people. If we don't increase their vulnerability, their craving of love and belonging, this won't work. This doesn't stop. This doesn't get better. It just causes way, way more deeper issues. And how do you increase attachment and connection with a gatekeeper? That's any adult, anybody that's in charge of someone, is senses, sameness, belonging, significant feeling, being known. And that's in chapter 2 in this book. And this is chapter 11 about how to unmake a bully. I think that was my aha reading and listening to this book this morning, because I put this slide in this morning. I thought, holy, I'm not going to swear. How? Why are we not helping the bully? I've got lots of stuff on prevention and helping the victim, but can't we help the bully? Yeah. So that's my little take to send you home with, because we're out of time. So we can get to some questions. Here's how to cope with suicidality that's connected to bullying. We know this is a huge issue. We do. Reducing conflict, parenting and caregiving, and this just goes on with some tips, right? Which is just normal stuff, growth. These are all handouts. So this is not these are just all, I put them in there as tools, right? So this is your growth mindset parenting or caregiving or gatekeeper. How do we get into a growth mindset? And this is why we want to do all that. And now we have clarity, connection, control, and closure. And then let's celebrate, because that's how I work. And these are my 5 3Cs that I do. And I go through this. And then you know what? We got to celebrate. We got to celebrate that we're doing better, that we can do better. So I promised you those 5 books that I've talked about, and I kind of bolded them here. That's not a book, that's an Audible, but anything by Brene Brown there. Parenting with Love and Logics, Gottman, Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child, Hold On to Your Kids, Brainstorm Siegel, Daniel Siegel. He is one of my top 10 authors. Okay.